Welcome back to Rangers Journal. Delighted to say we've got Kevin Thomson back on today, who's going to speak about the signing of Connor Barron for Rangers FC from Aberdeen.
Every night is the Rangers Journal night.
Kev, how you doing? Thanks for coming back on again, mate. Third appearance.
Yeah, all good's going on. I'll get a season ticket soon, won't I? People will be sick of listening to me.
Not at all. We're buzzing every time you agree to come on, mate. It's good to have you. So we'll just get straight into it. What's your kind of initial thoughts on Connor Barron signing for Rangers? Obviously, we think you had him at Kelty when he was in his younger career on a loan spell, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. Listen, I love him to bits. He's a great lad. I think it's sometimes hard when you've been an ex-player and you see these boys do well and they eventually end up at somewhere like Rangers. And obviously, when he left Kelty and went back to Aberdeen, you're desperate to see him do well. Maybe not so much Aberdeen do well, but you're obviously desperate to see the ones that you know. And I've just watched him kind of flourish. Really, I think he's had ups and downs. He's had times where he's the kind of Aberdeen fan. I like to kind of look at sometimes results off the back of managers, etc. And
yeah,
I think the Aberdeen fans that held him in high regard. I know he had obviously different spells in the team, out the team with Barry Robson, but in the end, obviously under Peter leaving at the tail end when they kind of kicked on a wee bit and turned a wee corner and had some positive results leading into the end of the season, he was kind of at the forefront of that. So, listen, we loved him to bits. Totally different being in League Two at Kelty than it is obviously being at Rangers, but. He's one that I'm not surprised that he's continuing to develop and he's continuing to do well, because he's a really good boy, but he's also very coachable and he's very hardworking and he's a humble lad, really respectful, and he's one that I'm sure that if whatever talent he's got, and I believe you have a ceiling, he'll be one that he'll reach his ceiling, because he's certainly got the grit and determination behind him as an individual.
Do you think personality wise, and think he's got it to make a grade at Rangers with demands and expectation and all that kind of stuff?
I think he's got a bit of bite, which I think you need. I think the hard part for Connor, or for anyone that signs for Rangers, is I go back to kind of Ryan Jack when he first signed as well, and John Lundstrom's, and these ones that have kind of been at the forefront of the club for the last 3 or 4 years or whatever. Yeah. I think people just expect a number 8 or a number 6 or whatever you want to call it, kind of sitting midfield or a central midfield player, to kind of run about like a headless chicken like I done and crash into tackles and kind of be the legs and the energy and the power. And I get that, because you need that. But I think it's unfair a wee bit, and I mean this in the highest respect to the fans, that you can't pigeonhole, every player that signs that's a number 8 or a number 6 and expect them to do X, Y, and Z. I think different players bring different qualities, and without downplaying wee Connor, he's certainly not going to run about and crash into tackles like I did, I don't think, but he's certainly got the quality and the desire and drive to go and put his foot in, and he's got a wee edge as an individual. He won't shirk no challenge, that's for sure. He's not big in stature, but neither was I. He's probably not as wide as I was, but he's certainly got a bit about him, and I like that, because he come from a big club at Aberdeen to Kelty, and we had a big changing room with big personalities. Even though we were at League Two, we had good players that had good careers, and were dropping down the levels, and they still had the demand on them. And I have to say, our older boys were brilliant with the younger ones, but they also created an environment that was a wee bit of bite. And they weren't going to let the young boys come through the big clubs and just waltz into the team and get it all their own way. So there was a real competitive edge, which we wanted to create as well. I wanted to create. And I think boys like Connor and Kieran, the boys for Aberdeen, we had Kieran and Gwenya as well. Big Danny Finlayson, who obviously Rangers fans will probably know. You've got one captain, and we had him on loan for St Mirren. So we had obviously Max Kucherachi as well, and I one for St Johnstone, Harrison Clark for Livingston, were the kind of young ones that we had on loan. But I have to say, Connor had that bite in abundance, really, that he could handle the kind of boys getting on his back and demanding off him and pushing him about and kind of laying one on him or whatever. So I think that, listen, I'm not blowing too much smoke up Kelty's backside or mine, but I certainly think the loans that he had at Brecon and the loan that he had at Kelty will have stood him in good stead.
Do you think, see, when, well, put it this way, in different scenarios in previous seasons, when Rangers have went down at Ibrox, say 1 or 2-0, take a Motherwell game, for example, a game that I kind of put on that kind of derailed the title charge last season. I think Rangers were quite right after it. I think when they go 1 or 2-0 down, this squad's got a habit of kind of withdrawing into their shut. And what we're needing is players to come in and kind of know when to play, know when to step up. Do you think Connor's got that to play in that environment?
Well, I think it's, listen, I come from Hibs and obviously we weren't winning every week. Connor's come from a team that, in Aberdeen, all due respect to them, weren't winning every week. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's a huge demand when you walk through that building, and there's almost nobody can give you the advice that you need to enlighten you what it actually feels like. Right. It's unique. It really is. It's. I know it's a cliche that people say it's a heavy jersey. It's a tough environment to succeed in. It is. That's the way it is. And I think until you get that opportunity, I think you earn the opportunity through. You're a good player and you get to Rangers, and good players leave Rangers as good players, and some not so good players leave Rangers as kind of ones that the fans are quite happy to see the back of, because that is the environment that you're entering. It's like the cauldron. Nice. It's like going into the lion's den as such. And I would gamble, even though I'm not a good gambler, I would gamble that the wee man's got the personality to handle that. Because listen, Aberdeen are a big club and there's expectation, but this club is a different ball game when it comes to expectation and demand. So he'll feel that, and he'll feel it early on. There is no honeymoon period at Rangers, unfortunately. You get that bedding in period at other clubs. You certainly don't get it at Rangers. It's just the way it is. So I've messaged him back and forth a couple of times. We've had a couple of WhatsApps, and I told him it was a special club, to embrace it, to give it his all, to use it as a platform to try and showcase his talent, because it's when you can succeed and you can win the fans over at a place like Rangers, then it can take you anywhere. So he's one that I'll be shouting for. I'll be his biggest fan. I'll be hoping that he can do well. But listen, I've got no. I'm certainly not naive, to say the least, at the expectation and the demands that will be on him. But I'm hoping, with fingers and toes crossed, that he can succeed and he can become a good Rangers player.
See, in terms of midfield and the way Rangers midfield is setting up just now, where could you potentially see him play? Do you see him as a 6? Do you see him as an 8? Do you see him as more an all-rounder? Like, what type of midfielder is he?
Listen, he's got bundles of energy. He's a fit boy. And obviously we had Jonas and Michael Tidser, who played in our midfield at Kelty, and Tids is kind of the experience, kind of the marshaller, the kind of give and go, the one that makes things tick. Jonas was the exciting one that could, flip it a coin and he could go and score you a goal or create a goal. And Connor had a bit of both. We always felt like Kelty, listen, I'm not comparing one to the other because it's totally left field really, but when we were at Kelty, we obviously did have a team that there was a lot of pressure on. We wanted to win the league, we wanted to win every game. That was the mindset that I had as a young manager, and I put that burden on the players really to try and create that environment. I wanted to be a manager that was at the top, that could handle the pressure of winning games week in, week out. So that was a demand that I had on the players. I wanted them to embrace that, and listen, they were absolutely brilliant for us. Connor, I would say, at Kelty, for what I've seen him, and I've totally different from what I've seen at Aberdeen, obviously, because I've not seen as much. But we wanted to utilise his energy because we felt as though he was good enough to get up onto the edge of the box, to when the ball turned over, to be that rat, to be that kind of combative midfielder, to go and win it back. He was good enough to sit behind the ball and play forward. At times, when he dropped a bit too deep, he could be a bit messy on the ball and turn it over in some areas. But we had good players that would compensate for that. But I have to say, like, he's got a bundle of energy, and I think like he's never going to be one that plays in front of the ball, but I think he can arrive there, almost like one that can arrive in the box, can arrive on the edge of the box, can be really good at counter pressing, as in like, if we're getting too technical, but he could be up on the edge of the box, a bit like John Lundstrom. When the ball turns over and he can go and win it back, he can get to the ball quickly. So listen, he's got loads and loads of quality. I don't think he'll score loads of goals. I don't think he'll have that one where he'll be getting double figures type, but I certainly think he's got the quality to arrive in the box, and he can. That was the challenge that we gave him at Kelty. I felt he had the quality to be more effective in the final third and do more and take more responsibility, chip in with more goals and chip in with more assists. And sometimes we had the wee debate, like, what are you? You need to pigeonhole yourself to being a box-to-box midfielder or a sitter or a 10 or one that can travel with the ball or one that can keep it and lend it and then run. Do you know what I mean? But that was just, listen, I'm just going into a wee fairy tale the way my head works really with kind of midfielders. But I would say that he's more than capable. He's sitting alongside as a 2. He's more than capable of playing right or left. I know it's old-fashioned now, but people call them obviously 2-8s, don't they? The kind of 2-8s or whatever you want to call them. Right, I would call them right midfielder, left midfielder, obviously the sitter. But if they played like 2, then 3, then 1, I wouldn't say ideally he would want to play the 1 in front of a 2. I think he would rather arrive into the box rather than standing waiting on the ball coming through, if that makes sense, like a kind of 10. But I certainly think he's got lots of string to his bow, and that's probably the biggest compliment I could give him. And I'll be interested to see how Clement does utilise him and where he sees him playing in the team. If he sees him playing in the team, is he going to have to fight to get in it? Which I think is a good thing for him, because I think he's got the personality to fight. I think if he's a given, don't want anyone to rest on the laurels at Rangers, do you? You want them to fight for it, to know that when they walk in that door, it's a dog eat world, really, and you have to fight for existence, and you have to fight to get in that team. And I think the wee man will have that wee bit about him to relish that challenge.
Definitely. Sounds like a really, really exciting signing. He's one that I was banging a Connor Barron drum since probably January, but there was different kind of conflicting reports coming in. So they wanted to move to Italy and they wanted to do this, but he's here now and he's got a scarf above his head, thankfully. How do you think he'll cope with the going back to Pataudry in a Rangers jersey?
I think he'll embrace it. I don't think he'll get phased. He comes from good people. His dad, Graham, spent a lot of time meshing him back and forth when he was at Kelty, and kind of kept in touch as such. And I just think, listen, he's a good boy. I see a lot of me in him as an individual. Listen, I probably matured a wee bit later than Connor. I probably, like, what I look like now is probably like a lot of representation of like what Walter was like, how he conducted himself, how he carried himself, what I wanted to be as an individual. I was probably that daft wee lad when I was at Hib with the blonde spiky hair, and as we all kind of go through our spells. And I would say Connor through the time that I spent with him, the time that I watched him play. He was the captain of the Aberdeen under-18s when I had the 18s, obviously, in at the training centre. He was always a kid that played a year up, so he could always handle the kind of bigger, stronger boys as such. He was always challenged at Aberdeen. Going to Brecon, I think, was a good thing for him, because we had the young Rangers players there at the time as well: Chris McKee, Adam Devine, Harris O'Connor. So I got exposed to watching a few of their games, because I had to give feedback to the boys and do their kind of clips, etc. And then obviously when they were part-time, I had to top them up. So I think I don't think Rangers fans should... Listen, they can have their own opinion, but I don't think people should get too downbeat on, he's been at Brecon, he's been at Kelty, in and out of the team at Aberdeen. I'm one for everyone, not just because I've got an alliance to him and I'm desperate to see him do well, but I am one of the ex-players that like to see the lads do well. Whatever player represents the club, whatever the manager's in place, whoever works in the academy, whoever's represented to the club, I'm an advocate for excuse me, for sitting back and seeing people do well. So I'm hopeful that you can go in there and do really well.
See, in terms of, we'll touch on Philippe Clement in a minute. Do you think that his kind of management style, it comes across on the outskirts that he's quite a good man manager. He's always talking to players, very clear in his instructions. I think the transition period from Michael Beale to Philippe Clement is, I think Clement kind of simplified quite a lot of things. Can you see Connor excelling under Philippe Clement?
I think so. I think it's quite important. When you get to a big club like I did when obviously I signed for the club, you get signed by that manager.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's quite important. I think you'd be under no illusions that if the new manager was coming in and inheriting players, it's natural. We're seeing it now. Yeah. Some players are coming at the end of their time and they're moving on, and he's recruiting his own players. I certainly think it gives you a confidence boost as an individual when the managers went out and actively tried to sign you. He'll have had the conversations. He'll have sold you the club. And some people might say, "What, sold you the club?" But listen, Walter sold me the club when I was there, and it wasn't that I needed any selling, but it's still your job as a manager to get shown around the stadium, around the training centre. Do you know what I mean? Sell the players that you'll be playing with. Do you know what I mean? The wonderful fans, the opportunity to play in Champions League, opportunity to win trophies. So like these will be conversations that the manager had no doubt will have. And listen, Connor will know that. Of course, we're Scottish boys. We got brought up in this era. We know fine well what Rangers represents. But I still think there would have been a selling point to Connor. We obviously been potentially a free transfer tribunal. I've got no doubt they'll have spoke to other clubs. So I think for him as an individual, it's a good thing that the managers signed him, and I think that will give him an opportunity to not bed in, it's the wrong terminology, but an opportunity to get himself in the groove and to get in the mix, to get opportunities to play, to showcase his talent, if that makes sense. I've never seen obviously Clement's kind of man management style and what he is around the training centre. I enjoy listening to him speak at post-match, pre-match. He had that one wee blip, didn't he, that the fans got a wee bit irate about when they kind of had the disappointing week and felt as though like it was a bit too kind of sugarcoating around the players as such. But I thought he protected the players really well as an individual, and apart from that one wee blip that he's had, I think he spoke really, really well. The passion he's got on the sideline, I think, relates to the fans. I think, as you mentioned, he doesn't try to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. So I'm presuming he's very similar to the players. And when I was a player, the more simpler the better, really, because the players know what they're doing. They understand what's expected of them, and I think when coaches get a bit too complicated and try and take you down a garden path that becomes a bit complicated for the players that have earned the right to play for Rangers, 9 times out of 10 you're probably giving them the wrong information.
Aye, definitely. Can you see Connor being in the starting 11 the first game of the season?
I certainly think he'll impress in pre-season because he's the type that'll go back in good nick. I've got no doubt that he'll be up near the front of the running. I'll be surprised if he's not. I've no doubt I'll probably hear at some point. But I'd be surprised if he wasn't. And I say it to all the young players. I've said it to the young players that come to my academy. I've said it to the young players since day dot. Like, summer for me was going and getting fitter, getting better. Scottish Cup final on a Saturday. I was back in the gym on a Monday. I wanted to get better. I win the league on the Saturday. I wanted to win the league the next again year. It was the mentality that kind of grew on me as an individual when I rubbed shoulders with people like McCoy, St. Durant's and Fergie's and obviously Walter at the forefront of that. So I feel a wee bit embarrassed sometimes saying to parents when grassroots kids at 11, 12, 13 get to the end of their 7-8 month kind of grassroots, half the games are off because of the weather, and mums and dads say, oh, we need to have a month break. I'm like, a month break? Like that. So I expect Connor, the elite level that he's at, to have looked after himself in the summer and to have been doing plenty of miles and plenty of yards. And I've always thought, and I've always said that, I said it to Cole McKinnon's, to Leon's, to Robbie Fraser's, when you get that opportunity, that call, that step in the pitch, first day of pre-season, you're one of the young boys, you want to be at the front. You want the first team boys to be chasing you. Do you know what I mean? No, there's the young boys at the back, and in the second group or in the third group, I remember pre-seasons when we were young boys at Hibs and you had your kind of older generation and up our first seat, old fashioned. The first team boys were getting a head start on us. We wanted to catch them. So I was, unfortunately, through injuries at different times, but certainly don't want to talk about myself. But my mentality was that, and I'm sure the wee man will be that type that'll have went back, and I think it'll be a good thing for him if he has, because it's a great opportunity pre-season when you go away on tour, you get the games, fans get the first glimpse of you. If you're sharp and you're fit and you're at it, it's amazing. First impressions can be so important.
I think it's something that I know we're kind of going off topic here, but I think you make a really interesting point in terms of the youth players have got a chance to set a standard in terms of fitness the first day of pre-season, isn't they? So I think that's
100%. It's but listen, be at the front. Be at the front like that.
Go and get it. Basically,
100%. It goes back to the Stephen one. I remember the Stephen one when he done it on BT, and he spoke about when he got his opportunity. He was going there to take somebody's jersey. He wasn't going there to make the numbers up. Do you know what I mean? That was obviously when he got his opportunity at Liverpool. We were the same. We and by the way, our opportunities were few and far between at times under Alex McLeish, because they had the bigger squads, the big hitters, the Russell Latapis, your Frank Sozis, your John O'Neills, you know what I mean? So it was like quite a tough environment for us to kind of get a crack. So when you got the one opportunity, like getting a wee whistle because they needed one or two players, you went over there to try and make an impression. And then when the opportunities under Bobby Williamson become more regularly, man, you were leaving there trying to be the best player. You weren't there to make up the numbers and just blend in. You were blending in for nobody at Rangers.
Aye, definitely. Just quickly, a last question. It's just everything kind of surrounding Rangers just now. See, in terms of the Connor Barron signing, there seems to be there's a bit of a clamour among fans, and I've even spoke to you about it in terms of signing Scottish boys. As this something, obviously there's links to Kenny McLean, different players like that. Do you think they need to go out and get Liam Kelly's another one? Do you think they need to go out and get another couple of Scottish players in?
I think that I've seen a lot of the fans speak about this, and when I go to Rangers events and that, and people speak about like the spine and listen, I've said it so many times. The one word I used for my time at Rangers was lucky.
Mm-hmm.
I had the best manager. I was surrounded by greats. Your Coisties, your Durantes, Barry as our captain, John Gregg walking about the building, rest his soul, Sandy Jardine. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was so lucky. And listen, these people didn't kick a boot anymore, unfortunately. So I think without opening a can of worms, there's a lot of viable opinions in the respect that it does matter and it's important. But I think the flip of that is it's only important if the right people come along at the right time. Right. And I think that's really important for me. So I think when the club get linked with different players, and listen, I wish everybody all the best, and I hope they go and sign it. I'd never want to put anyone off anyone, because it's such a brilliant place. And then when you get that opportunity, it'll be the best place you could ever play football, really. So I would hate to kind of be unjust to anyone, but I think you have to sign the right types, right. And the right types are people that they didn't need to be Rangers fans. They didn't need to know the Scottish League, but I think they have to have some sort of understanding of what the club represents and what's expected of them. And I think when you look back and you think of a Scott Arfield coming in, he was probably Scotty coming in at the right time when your Davos and your Griegsies and that were returning, who were part of the furniture, who did have the DNA, who did know the standards. So where are they players? Do you know what I mean? So I think if you go searching for, I've always thought, listen, it's difficult because I know finances, but Rangers should be looking for the best people in practice, and that should be in the academy, the medical department, the first team, the staff, everybody that's surrounding the environment that creates the team that is representing the club on a Saturday should hopefully be the best money that they can afford, the best people that are best placed to make sure that they're the kind of elite in that position, and that comes down to the players as well. So I think the Kenny McLean ones, listen, I think he's a terrific player and he had obviously a great season. I don't know how much arms and legs are on it, but regardless of a Kenny McLean name or a Connor Barron, or I know Connor's obviously signed, but I would never float names as such or fly names, but I think the club, they certainly need that British spine, but you only need it if it's the right people at the right time. And that's the challenge for the manager: who's available, who fits the bill, who are the right people to get in the building, who are listen, Jack Butland as a leader by all accounts. Every time I hear people talk about his presence in the changing room, his leadership qualities, he's this, he's that, he's led on the pitch, I'm presuming he's a good pro within the building. They're the type of people you want in the building. And then when you get people like Connor Barron's, like myself, the kind of starry-eyed ones that come in, the young ones that you hope that are the future, and the ones that can become really important for the club, you need the right types to look around. And I say it to all the young players: look around at the standards. Stand and watch, stand and look. Why is Barry Ferguson knowing the hall mucking about? Why is Barry Ferguson not walking about on his phone in the hall? Do you know what I mean? So you're 16, 17. Why are you doing it? Do you know what I mean? I never got any rules or any letter of the law when I first joined. I was clever enough as an individual to look around and know what was expected of me. And if I wanted to succeed, I had to listen and learn quickly. And I had to watch what was required. And I either was going to fall into his suit and try and get myself to set the same type of standards as them and fall into that chain of events as such to give myself the best opportunity, or I was going to fail. And I would say that a lot of people arrive at Rangers and fail because they underestimate how difficult it is.
Aye. Well, Kev, thank you for coming on again. Honestly, it's much appreciated, mate. I'll let you get going and get back to your busy schedule.
No problem. Listen, thanks for having me. Anytime.
Oh, no problem, mate. Right, thank you for coming on. Cheers.
Pleasure, mate.
Right, guys, so that was the interview with Kevin Thomson on the Connor Barron signing. Thank you again for him coming on. I think he pretty much epitomises what should be in a club just now, and I'll keep my opinion on that one to myself. Cammy, I'll come to you first. What was how do you think the interview went? Did it give you any kind of insight into the play?
It did. I mean, I spoke to you guys. I don't have a great knowledge on the player. I'll be perfectly honest with you, but I was aware of him when he went and Kelty had that successful season, and I think it's interesting because I always enjoy hearing Kevin Thomson talking. He talks so passionately, and he talks about standards and that sort of thing. And I think the thing that came to me was he sounds like he's got the personality. I think he's got the drive, and I think he sounds like he's a grafter and the type of player that will know that he's not going to potentially be a first pick. But exactly what KT was saying, he's going to come back in good nick. He's going to work his socks off during pre-season. He's going to try, and I think that first impression, I think, is very important to us as supporters. You know, because we're a fickle bunch, and when you make your mind up on a player, it tends to stick, sort of thing. You know, so lots of positives. I'm interested to see the system that we do play in the middle of the park and where he fits into that. That's the interesting for me. But it's certainly he's went out on loan. He's then got games with Aberdeen, so he's been round. He's worked hard to get to the opportunities that he's got at Rangers. So I think, as Kevin says, it's up to Connor Barron now to grasp the opportunity.
Paul just came in with a really good comment. He says KT should be in around the training centre. If it's working with B team or younger, Paul, I couldn't agree with you anymore, mate. I think we need more people like that within a club driving the standards up. Doug, I'm going to come to you. On my first question, I asked Kevin about playing for Rangers and what comes with the demands, and he said things like he's a very coachable player. He would think he'll reach his ceiling. He'll bring a wee bit of bite to Midley Park. What's your take on all that?
Well, I mean, that sounds great to me. A lot of that stuff's kind of some of the things that we've been missing. In particular, he was talking about having a lot of energy, which I think is really important, and something that will really help bring a lot to the team as well. He's joining obviously with a lot of other younger players. So in terms of him like reaching his ceiling, I think he's got a really good opportunity now to come to the club, be part of this group of new young players who are all being coached, thinking forward, who are all being coached to reach the potential and going to the best that they can be. So I think on those kind of points, he's got a lot of positives, and as I say, hopefully he can bring them all to fruition at the club.
Aye, definitely. Cammy, Kev also went on to say that he thinks he's got a personality to handle expectations. I kind of put that question to him that when Rangers go 1-0 down or at home and you're at 75th minute, we need players that are going to finish up, not shrink into it. What's your take on it? Now, given the players, he's a wee bit of a grafter in the middle of the park. He'll get in amongst the tackles. Do you think he's going to settle quite well?
I mean, certainly all the signs appear positive, but until you pull the blue jersey on and you're in the middle of the park and that situation that you describe is there, it's until you're wearing the jersey, that's the acid test. I mean, I think Kevin Thomson has said many times you're only as good as your last pass at Rangers, and I think Connor Barron he'll very quickly realise that. It's but there's sounds a lot of positives with regard to things that we are currently missing within the middle of the park. That he has attributes that we can will basically enhance us in that area. And see, anybody that's a grafter, I think Rangers fans will always, I know we always say effort's the minimum, but if you see somebody that's pressing and they're trying to get into tackles and what have you, the fans will always stick with a player like that, I think. And I think they'll always the body language of players, I think, is always a big thing with regard to us as a support.
Cammy, see what I've took for the interview is I think he's going to flourish in stopping counter-attacks for other teams in the SPFL. It seems to me when Rangers are pressing high up the park, I think he's almost going to be the man to stop the team countering on us, if that makes any sense. He's going to press, he's going to get the ball back. And
I think that was a huge frustration of mine with it, given going back over the last 8 weeks of the season. I think you referred to the Motherwell game where the sort of wheels came off after that. I thought off the ball and in transition, I thought we were very, very poor. And I think that's something that if he's got the attributes and the qualities that's going to put out those fires sort of situation. Right. It's I think you go back, I think we'll probably touch on it. Ryan Jack, when available, was that sort of player. Protected your defence, protected your fullbacks, sniffed out things before they became a problem, So I think he doesn't sound as though he's the type of player that's going to beat three men and stick one in the top bin. But to be successful and to win league titles and to get back to being a successful football club, you need a mix of types within your team for that to happen. And certainly he is a different type to what we currently have.
Definitely, got to agree with you, mate. Very valid point. Doug, I'm going to come into you. Obviously, I asked Kevin Thomson about the type of midfielder that or what role he's going to play at Rangers. Is he going to be a 6 or an 8? I think you prefer prepared some work on this, haven't you? You want to bring it up?
Yes, I pulled together some of his stats from last year to have a wee look at. And in particular as well, at the risk of doing what Kevin told us not to and pigeonholing him, I've taken his attributes here and compared them to Ryan Jack. That is some chat, that I think a lot of fans have already reached themselves. Always comparisons come from Aberdeen and things as well. But the thing that really struck me when you're looking at those attributes is that they're bang on. Apart from the tactical aspect, where Connor actually comes out slightly ahead, they match perfectly. Which if that's to be believed, then that would suggest that he could be, a perfect fit to replace Jack. And I mean, personally, I would absolutely love that because, Ryan Jack was a great player when he was able to play. So if he can come in and grow into, I don't expect him to walk in and be Ryan Jack. That would be unfair, given that he's still a young lad. But if he can come in and grow and develop into Ryan Jack 2.0, but, fit for 30, 40, 50 games a year, then I think, we'll be a very happy fan base. He's, he tends to, play in that central and slightly defensive position. I think Kev touched on the fact he doesn't get a huge amount of goals. He only had 1 goal and 2 assists last season. So I think that's something that we will probably want to see a little bit more out of him and develop that side of him a bit more if he's playing for us. We do need to get more goals from our players in other positions. I liked what you said about him making late runs in. If he can be a defensive player that makes late runs into the box, I think we'll get joy out of that. It's been a pet peeve of mine for a number of years that we don't have enough players that make late runs into the box. It was one thing that Arfield was really good at, and he got a lot of goals that way. So if he could do something like that, that would be good. But if you look at that heat map there, he's really mobile. He's all over the pitch there. He's clearly taking some corners for Aberdeen because he's got a little heat point at one of the corners. So that would suggest he's got decent delivery, which is good because that might be something we're going to miss next season. We've obviously already lost Barisic, and we're touch and go as to what's happening with Tavernier. Those are our 2 main ball deliverers from set pieces. So if you can bring some of that, I think that'll be a positive as well. But as I say, at the risk of pigeonholing him straight away, if he can be Ryan Jack 2.0, I'd be a very happy man.
I definitely, mate. I think I need to agree with you on that one. I think it does offer a wee bit more in terms of going forward. I'm not sure what his passing stats are like, but I know you'll come on to that in a wee minute. Cammy, boys took a good few corners for Aberdeen. When was the last time you seen a centre mid hit a corner for Rangers?
What a good corner! You're probably going back to Giovanni van Bronckhorst or George Alberts or somebody like that. That's a podcast in itself.
100%,
talking about set pieces.
I actually think that's the pod we're going to be doing tomorrow night as a set piece one. So that'll be interesting. Doug, what is his passing stats like?
Not too bad. Last season, he sort of 0.8 key passes per game, 79% accuracy overall. That was increased in his own half, so that's good. So he's not going to lose silly balls. 88% of accurate passes in his own half. They do drop off a bit in terms of accuracy in the opposition half and in terms of long balls. So, that'll be a big shift from sort of Lundstrom style if he's going to play in that area. Lundstrom, was very good at that kind of pinging those long balls. He's below 50% for those types. So, some work to be done there. But again, he's a young player, so I don't expect him to be brilliant at everything. But it certainly looks like, it will be a safe pair of feet when he's got the ball in those defensive areas. It suggests to me he probably plays a lot simple, easy passes, which is what you kind of want from players in that position. So I think the key will be if he is going to play in a slightly more defensive role, that obviously they have a creative midfielder beside him that can do a bit more with the ball. So maybe from the sounds of what Kev was saying in terms of being energetic and being a bit of a grafter, he's maybe going to be that one that will sit and be there to dominate and get the ball back, play a nice easy pass to the more creative player who then sort of will spring attacks. And again, I mean, that would suit fine, particularly if even, with or without someone like Tavernier, I think we'll still have attacking fullbacks, and so we'll need players that will cover those areas. Again, that was something Jack was really, really good at and was covering when Tavernier pushed forward. And without him, I don't think we've had a player as good at doing that, and that has left gaps sometimes when Tav's been forward. So again, if he's going to sit back and he can marshal that area covering for spots, I think that'll all be good stuff.
Definitely, mate. Definitely. Cammy, see in terms of the type of player he is, kind of got a bit of bite in the midway part. He's fast. He doesn't shirk out a tackle. Now we've watched John Lundstrom in the kind of sixth role for the last kind of 3 years. Very average Rangers career, I would say. Kind of sums up on it. Good in some points, not so good in some other. Do you think that this is a player that could potentially flourish under Clement, given the type of signing that we've had so far?
I think it was very interesting, and I think we're all guilty of it. We need a 6, we need an 8, we need a 10, we need. I think it's the modern way of talking about it, and I think it was. He sounds very much to me an all-rounder, and I think that's the thing. It's like, I mean, I still believe, it's gone off topic slightly, I still believe that we need a controlling midfield player, somebody that can be that. So I'll ask Stephen Davis, sort of, I would love a Stephen Davis or a Barry Ferguson in his pomp sort of thing. But the one thing that I don't think we will try to do, I think Connor Barron is, without pigeonholing, which I'm going to pigeonhole, I think he's more of an 8 than a really deep midfield player. But I think if he's playing in a sort of 2, I think he could certainly do that. But I don't think we're going to ask him to do something that he's not got the skill set for. I mean, I think you spoke there about Lundstrom, and without me defending him, we signed John Lundstrom as a number 8 from Sheffield United, and then we tried to pigeonhole him into a number 6. I'm not here to defend him, but I do think that for us to be successful moving forward with all our signings, we can't be asking them to do things that we've not signed them for, if that makes sense. It's like, you're not going to turn I think Kev said he's not going to be a number 10, so you're not going to turn Connor Barron into play where Todd Cantwell's currently playing. I think Clement will have a clear idea where and what he sees his role within the team and the squad. So we just have to see how pre-season plays out, and hopefully stays fit, works hard, and has a positive makes positive early impressions on us.
Doug, as kind of hard question, but is Connor Barron going to enhance our midfield enough that we can get closer to Celtic's midfield next season? Because that ultimately is the bar that's set. We've had a much improved performance against them in the Scottish Cup final, but we've still got beat at the end of the day. Is signing players like this going to help bridge that gap and better them? Because that's what we need to be aiming for, isn't it?
I mean, I'd say yes, on kind of 2 fronts. I mean, as I say, he's a young upcoming player with a lot of excitement. I think he's going to be potentially part of the group rather than necessarily your nailed-on starter, particularly in those games. But, I mean, if nothing else, he improves this. Again, if we take him as the Jack replacement, he improves the squad because he's probably going to be fit most of the time rather than less of the time. I mean, how many times have we gone in? Even the last cup game, we went in with like half of our team injured, which at the end of the day makes a big difference. You can't we're never going to close the gap if we constantly never have our full team available to us. And you've got players like Scott Wright, who's played way more than he really should have needed to, because we've not had players available. And he gets a lot of grief because he's not quite the level we want. But I mean, I think I've got nothing but love for him, just because he's gone in and done his best, and it's not his fault that he's been in the position of playing so frequently. So bringing in young, fit, hungry players, I think, improves the chances of getting closer, because it improves our chances of having good players available. And again, like I say, he's coming into what is hopefully an exciting dressing room with lots of changes, a manager pushing through a new era, a lot of players that are similar age to him. So, hopefully they're able to kind of bond together and make a wee group of players that are, like I say, pushing to be the best that they could be. A lot of them are going to have their sights set on other places. They're not necessarily going to be here for the next decade. And if they want to achieve those goals, then they're going to have to do well. So I think that's the thing that kind of excites me about the way that our signings are coming up. Not only does the overall package of signings look like there's a plan behind it, but it's all these players of similar ages, similar stature, similar potential. And I think that, that gives you a really good opportunity to build a strong dressing room that's really pushing to be the best, to be winners, and to allow them to then make their next steps if that's what they're wanting to do.
Cammy, Curry's come in with a question for you. He says, do you think Connor Barron's going to be more of an 8 when we have the ball than a 6 off the ball?
Aye, so he's a 7 then. It's a good point. I think that was potentially what I was trying to say, but didn't really actually put it as succinctly as Curry Muncher has said there. That's a fair point. I do think he's a player that will, I would hope, get better playing with better players.
Mm-hmm.
In a team that's 70% possession in the bulky matches, which is something that's going to be different for him. So I do think that as much as we have doubts over certain players and what have you, it is a step up in quality, the player that he's going to be working with and the manager that he's going to be working with. And I like the fact that Kevin said about him being so coachable, and I think that's what I like to see as a supporter, a player that you can see areas where he needs to improve, and you actually start to see that improvement over time. But I think Curry's. I think if we went back to the Steven Gerrard middle three, I think Connor Barron would be very suited to that style. If it was almost like the flat three in the middle of the park, and that again, we're all speculating on the basis of the way that Philip Clement set up the Rangers team at the back end of the period since he came in. Who's to say that he's not going to change that midfield setup during the summer? And Diomande, who has the skill set, I spoke about the skill set. He has the skill set to play further forward. So where Diamande's been playing deeper, you could potentially have like a Raskin and a Barron with Diomande sort of playing in front, sort of thing. So that's intriguing as well. But I do think that if you played a flat three, I think a lot of us spoke about the Old Firm games at the back end of the season where we said we need to match up to them in the middle of the park. I think Connor Barron, on the basis of what we've heard, and I think he would have been able to be one of those three, because what we were saying was like Diomande, Sterling, and say Connor Barron. There's a three that's going to be competitive and are going to get in about them, and there's still a bit of football there as well, So I think he strikes to me, he's got the sort of versatility to adapt to sort of different levels of different styles and different tactical approaches.
Aye, definitely, mate. Doug, I'm going to come back into you about something else. You can tell Kevin's very, very passionate about what he does, about being a youth coach, etc. Now he get me fired up during that interview. I need to be honest with you, because he was like, why can these youth players not go and break the norm in pre-season, like your likes of Cole McKinnon, Bailey Rice, but to name a few? How can they not get in and set a standard for fitness?
Yeah, absolutely. I think every player should be doing that. I want every player to be trying to outdo everyone else when they're going into the dressing room, especially again a dressing room that's in flux and has a lot of new players. There should be a whole bunch of one-upping each other going on, I would like to think, because you've got a whole bunch of players coming in looking to impress their new manager. So I'd like to think that they're all doing that. There was a little bit of chat in the comments about Devine and him potentially playing, and apologies, I forget who it was that said it, but like someone had asked, do we think he's good enough? And my opinion is, well, if the coaches have put a player into the first team squad, they must think he should be able to play a little bit. Otherwise, there's no point in him being there at all. So that's the thing that consistently disappoints me about young players never getting a game, is that, well, if you put them in the squad, they should be good enough to play at least the bottom, third of the league. So put them in and play, and let them play those games. Give them the minutes and let them develop. I've talked a lot tonight about the players developing, and we need to do that ourselves as well, because that's another way to save yourself some money. If you bring through 6 new players of your own, then that's 6 players you don't have to go out and buy. So again, with a younger dressing room, hopefully that allows our young players and these new young players again to mix and get on and drive each other forward. But yeah, any player that's not away at tournaments or things during breaks, I like to think that they should be at home, keep themselves fit, keep themselves ready, so that they're going in ready to go straight into pre-season and absolutely beast it. And give the manager questions, because that's the best kind of questions the manager can have. Oh no, I've got too many options. Give them those problems.
Cammy, what was your thoughts on it?
I think he did. He talk about Cole McKinnon and Robbie Fraser and guys like that, and I think Robbie Fraser obviously got his new deal yesterday. Cole McKinnon's been in and around the first team training, I think, pretty much since Philip Clement came in. You just have to impress, and it's one of the few things that Michael Beale said that I agreed with when he spoke about impressing your teammates. It's not just about impressing the manager. It's like going back on the first day pre-season and the younger players being at the head of the runs, the younger ones that are winning the bleep test and all that sort of thing. And I think that then impresses the manager, impresses the teammates. But I think it just shows the right mentality. These guys they've got an opportunity here. This is I think Doug says the Rangers team in flux. Mm-hmm. There's never a better opportunity. There's always an opportunity, but I think at this point, when John Lundstrom, when Ryan Jack, others are going to leave. The middle of the park, there's areas where the squad needs. There's gaps, and as said, if those young players can fill those gaps, that's saving Rangers money to then use that money on players that potentially can be starters. But it's up to the young players. I think it's an area we have to improve massively, but the young players have to show it. They have to be impressing Monday to Friday. They don't just get handed the opportunity just because they've got the ability. You have to, when you're within the first team environment, you have to impress, and then when the opportunity comes, you have to grasp it.
Definitely, 100%. I don't see why these young boys can't go and set standard early in pre-season, and then when the standard gets matched, then they've got a challenge and they need to go and match it again. It's all about standards. Doug, obviously I asked Kevin about Scottish players signing and the whole kind of, there's a bit of furore in the fan base just now that we need more British. Kev said that he did believe that we need a British spine in a sense, but he says it had to be the right people at the right time. What's your kind of thoughts on that idea?
I mean, I've never been quite as attached, I think, as some people are to the desperate need to have sort of homegrown players from a sort of identity point of view. I think, we're a global team, and I'd like to think anyone that's coming can come, and if they're going to be a big player for us, then they're going to get the mentality and the mindset of what it means to play for us, regardless of where they come from. But I mean, I do think there are advantages to it, so I don't knock it completely. But what Kev said is really the key point and the most salient aspect of it. It has to be the right players. It doesn't matter. I don't care where a player comes from. It has to be the right player. If he's the right player, then he'll do what we need him to do. And ultimately, I think that's the most important aspect is having the best players that we can possibly get, so that we can get the outcomes that we want to get. In terms of that as well, something that I just kind of thought of when Cammy was talking there about the young players and their role, as well as pushing to play. Having them pushing keeps whoever is playing on their toes, which I think is also something that's really important that we haven't touched on. If you're, we'll just use Tavernier as an example. I'm not suggesting that he's slacked off in any way, but he's a nailed on starter and has been for pretty much the entire time he's here. But there's no way that he doesn't get a little, another 5 or 10% out of him when he's got Patterson behind him than if he's got nothing behind him or someone that's practically never going to get near. So, even if the player's playing well, I think he can get that little extra if they know, if I don't keep this up game in, game out, I'll be out the team. And that's another thing I think those players can bring. But I do like having, I think for me, the most important part of having Scottish players in is for Europe more than anything else, because it's just a simple numbers game. It hampers the team if we're 3 players down squad-wise than the teams we're playing against. And that did become an issue last season when we were scrambling about, when we had no left-backs and things like that. So that's probably the biggest thing for me in terms of getting in sort of local players and Scottish players.
Cammy, I'm going to come to you on Kevin said best people in practice at Rangers, standards across all departments. He says that when he went into Rangers as a young boy, he just kind of looked around and he would see Lisa, John Gregg and the late great Sandy Jardine, and Barry Ferguson wasn't on his phone. So he's like along the lines now of saying like these young players need to come in and look round about them. But I think now, are those standards in place? Are these boys getting the grounding they need? Are we as a club as good at setting standards as we used to be?
No, that's the simple. I think there's so many things that need to be fixed. Like I said, it's another pod in itself, talking with regard to that. And I think there's been a lot of turnover across various areas of the club, boardroom down. And I think we need a bit of continuity across the club. We have to be recruiting the right people on the park, but we have to be recruiting the right people off the park. And I think Kev was spot on with regard to the right people behind the scenes, the right people that are in the ears of the players. That could be the masseuses, it could be the conditioning, it could be whatever. They just need the right, they need to be hearing the right advice. They have to be getting the right advice. They have to be getting the right conditioning. I think he spoke about Davy Weir, Barry Ferguson, Super Ali, Ian Durrant, Sandy Jardine, John Gregg, Walter. You know, I mean, that's you know, you don't just pull these guys off a trees sort of situation. We were very, very fortunate, and I think he said himself, lucky. You know, he looked his right, and he had Stephen Davis, and looked to his left, and he had like Ian Durrant, you know, coaching him, and that sort of situation. You know, and that's not going to happen overnight. And I think that's part of the challenge that Philip Clement and the players have. But there's so many areas that it's going to take a number of windows for the on the park, and probably a similar length of time for the right people to come in behind the scenes. But I would expect, I think, as has been said elsewhere, I think there's going to be probably a bit of movement in that area, and I think we'll probably find out more in the next few weeks on that.
Aye, I hope we find out more in the next few weeks on it, mate. I really do. And I also need to call out the amount of the lack of communication for the club on this stadium issue is nothing short of a shambles. Like, I need to say it for what it is. We get a very brief statement and we've heard absolutely nothing since. Do you know what I mean? So what's the point in putting things in place to bridge the gap between the club and the fans, and then putting out a half-arsed statement and then not telling us anything else since? Like, what have they tried to do? What's the thoughts? Where are we going to go? Like, already our season's going to be impacted through bad standards. You know what I mean? And that's what it all closed down to for me.
I think the fixtures come out tomorrow, so I think that'll be 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. We'll get an idea with regard to that, you know. But listen, communications it's been a problem, and I think, you know, they'll be easy enough to take my direct debit on the 1st of July for my season ticket, you know, but they'll not tell me when I'm going to actually be able to watch a game inside Ibrox. I think the statement was, as you know, I think you probably found out more information via other journalists than you did from the club. And I just think at times we are, as a support, we are taking for granted. You know, you are just a number. They're only interested in you paying your £700 a season, your My Jers memberships and all that sort of stuff. You know, and you can pay lip service. I feel like I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here, but you can pay lip service to CEO forums. Obviously, that was one of James Bisgrove's ideas. You know, box ticking exercises, fan advisory boards. We have a fan advisory board. Has the fan advisory board issued any sort of, never mind Rangers issuing a communication, has the fan advisory board, I think Gary Ralston is potentially, I don't know if he's the head of it, ex-journalist sort of situation. Have they asked a question? Do they not think it's important that the Rangers support needs to know a bit more information? You know, because it's my wee boy, I've spoke to, he's 6 years old, and he's going, Daddy, when are we going to get back to Ibrox? You know, because the stuff's not being delivered. You know, I mean, what I don't understand is we haven't suddenly decided on the 1st of April that this work's going to happen at the end of the season. This has been in the planning for a long time. Who is the person that has lost their job as a result of it? Who has the overall responsibility with regard to that? Why wasn't all the materials on site prior to taking the stand apart?
Aye.
You know, I think Curry spoke about John Bennett. You know, I mean, you used to talk about Douglas Park and the like, no saying much. I know words are cheap. I'm a great believer in actions speak louder than words. Well, the actions of this board over the course of Sydney and all that sort of situation, you know, it's a shambles, to be perfectly honest with you.
Completely agree with you, mate. Completely agree with you. I like to think, like, here we try and remain like balanced on everything, and we've been more than fair when it comes to Team on the Park and the criticism we've gave it in the club. But this is Clement's walked into a mess and knew that he's got a clean slate. He's now got another mess to deal with. You know what I mean? And the guy, we can't criticise Clement's tactics or his teams or his results, because he's had an absolute, I can't swear, but he's done an absolute mess for he come in, and it just seems to be one mess after the other, and we've not even kicked off yet, and we're going to be running up a hill. You know what I mean?
I think it's an added difficulty that he did not need going into a challenging early part of the season. You know, the fact that you're going to play 2 Champions League qualifiers away for Ibrox. You know, those Champions League qualifiers, you look at the opposition, we're going to be difficult regardless of that. You know, and going to Murrayfield, as appears most likely, you're there's 17,000 more people going to be inside the stadium, but it's no Ibrox on a Champions League Champions League night sort of thing, you know. So I feel sorry for the manager with regard to he's the one with the squad that's going to have to deal with the challenging situation. And I think if he manages to get us through 2 Champions League qualifiers in spite of that, and in spite of all the changes that are going to be going on, I think he'll have done a hell of a good job.
Doug, you want to come in, mate?
I was going to say, while you were chatting there, I decided to take a quick look into said fan advisory board. Apparently, the last time they met was on the 24th of March, having previously met on the 16th of January. So, based on that timetable, they would be overdue for a meeting. I'll put a link in the comments for everyone if they want to see the minutes of that last meeting. You can contact them directly as well at contact@rangersfab.co.uk. Again, I'll put that in the comments in a second. So, I mean, I totally agree. You know, I want to hear more from these types of things. There's no point in setting them up if nothing's going to happen. So I'd encourage people to email them and ask them, you know, when are you meeting again? What's happening? Can we get more details? And that kind of thing. Just touching on the stadium issue, the one I tend to be I'm a bit of a pushover with these things, so I'm usually overly nice. My train of thought is that they've probably been talking with the league in the first instance, and maybe trying to shuffle the timetable around, because that would be the easiest thing to do, and that'll be very obvious if. I've got loads of lotions and balms and all sorts of beard care stuff. I can give to anyone. Yeah, I think that will become immediately obvious, like you say, tomorrow when the fixtures come out for our first 5 games are all away. Then they've obviously looked to sort it that way. But if not, then I'll be on the same kind of train of thought as you guys, and thinking, right, well, what's going on? Because, like you say, big games, Champions League qualifiers, etc., we need a bit of certainty with that kind of thing.
Yep, 100%. I'm just going to bring up Corey's question before I finish off. I'll answer this. He said, would have a possible youth player being given minutes in Tavernier's position helped him out, especially on his fitness? To be honest with you, I think Tavernier's lack of performance, hindered performances towards the end of the season, Corey, was... I don't know if it was down to fitness or not. I think it was more down to players and stuff starting to become a wee bit better than him. I think he is on that kind of downward spiral. Now is the time to sell, if you ask me. But anyway, after that,
I think. Sorry, just to interrupt on that one. I think if Dujon Sterling hadn't been asked to play in 3 different positions, probably in the same team, he would have had more opportunities at right back. You know, I think that's one of the few positions that he hasn't had a real number of games, to be perfectly honest with you. But I think that might have. But I think you said earlier on about Nathan Patterson. that's the sort of thing that you want. You want a young player that you can confidently put in, and it's going to help take the player out the firing line. I mean, I think back to cup ties that we played in February. That was a time where there was a lot of fixtures. You know, I mean, I think you're quite right, Scott, that Tav's on a downward spiral with regard to his actual overall form regression. But I think you could have sort of managed his minutes a bit better with regard to cup ties. I'm thinking we played Ayr in the Scottish Cup. I have recollection of a Saturday night game against Scott Brown in Ayr, and I'm sure Lundstrom didn't start that game. That's the sort of game that John Sterling or a Nathan Patterson or a Adam Devine, if he's good enough. That's the sort of thing that we have to be looking to do, whether it's James Tavernier that's playing right back or whether it's somebody else. That's part of the sort of revolution and the growth and the change of this Rangers team that we have to see moving forward.
Definitely, mate. Definitely. So I'm going to wrap up there. Doug, I'll come to you first. Do you get any final thoughts and just want to thank your viewers, etc.?
Yeah, again, thanks for everyone. Again, people getting involved a lot tonight and good questions and chat, particularly about the young players, which I think is something everyone wants to see more of. You know, young Rangers lads in the team. It's everyone's dream is a starting 11 of you know, Rangers fans born and bred. So, just would wrap up and say, you know, I really hope that, you know, Barron does really well. I hope he's a good signing. As I said at the beginning, if he can be Ryan Jack 2.0, then even better. Or I'll not to pigeonhole him. So if he can be Connor Barron 1.0 and a successful player, then that would be great. So yeah, thanks everyone.
Cammy, I've never seen maybe a Rangers daft chat that was going on in your chat just now. They were all talking about beards and that and Manscaped and Corey wishes he could grow a beard and saying he looks like a homeless junkie and all this kind of stuff, man. That sort of stuff's unrivaled. Have you got any kind of any shaving tips or anything like that?
No, definitely not. Listen, it's good just to the team obviously started back training Monday. I haven't paid a massive amount of attention to the galleries and all that sort of situation. You know, just hope that we can start over the next few weeks, see a bit more. I think we go off to Holland in a couple of weeks' time. Obviously, we're playing Ajax across there. I think there'll be a bit of movement between now and I'm going to say that's about the 10th of July. That what are we at? 26th of June. So I think over the next 2 weeks, I think it'll be interesting to see the players that have come in the building, players that potentially don't travel. You know, that might be will that happen, or will we just take everybody and then players will just start to drop off, sort of thing? I think we're in a position just now where I don't see a lot of the signings being starting 11 players on paper. I'm not seeing that just now, but I think there's a bit of movement with regard to certain players within the sort of first team, saleable assets, bring money in to enable you. It's probably complicated by the Euros and all the international tournaments that are going on with regard to getting deals over the line. But we just have over the next few weeks just start to see things become a bit clearer. There's clearly a lot going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of, and not a lot is making its way into the public domain. So you're speculating, sort of thing. You know, it's just good. Listen, I could talk about Rangers 24 hours a day, and it's there's so you come on talking about Connor Barron, and then you end up talking about how peed off I am with the Rangers board and the fan advisory. And I just want Rangers to be successful. You know, I just want Rangers to be the best in all areas. And we, you know, without saying, but we are second best in class, you know, and to use a John Bennett with regard to best in class, we're second best across all areas, on and off the park at the moment, and that's something that we have to change now and moving forward.
100%, mate. 100%. There's nothing you've said there I can disagree with. Some breaking news, everybody. Curry's going to be back with the stands at Ibrox just before we start our next season. So head on over to that, subscribe and turn your notifications on. Trust me, you will not be disappointed with that podcast. It is what a laugh, man. It's good crack. Right, boys, thank you for joining me tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night. I think the Europod is on tomorrow. And then I'm on with Doug tomorrow night, Gary Morris, and I can't remember who else there's. I know there's 4 of us. And we're going to talk about the need for Rangers to get a set-piece coach. So tune in. We'll see you tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. The boys will be on with the Europod. It's 8, I think, some point before it. And we're going to run that live. So get any comments, like and subscribe. There's loads of content coming your way, and it's mostly Rangers related. It's only the Euro stuff that isn't. So thanks for tuning in, and remember, every night is Rangers Journal night.